We interrupt your day to bring you this special session of TLD Cast. Hey, everybody, how's it going? TLD Cast for TLDC19. Get yourself together, get prepped, get excited, get fired up, do all the things you need to do to get ready for an event. That's why we're here. Man, I'm super psyched to see so many of you. Thanks for hanging out with us again. I see a lot of familiar names that may have hung out with Sam and Matt and I this morning. So good times will be had by all. We've got a great 90-minute conversation to have. I'm going to let Trish totally run with this thing. I'm going to help out on my side doing some screen shares and stuff like that. You guys definitely don't want to hear me for another hour, so I'm going to let Trish guide you all on a journey of prep. The TLDC countdown to the conference, pre-planning your program. Hi, Trish. I'm doing fantastic.
How are you?
Just so everybody knows, we're very transparent around here with the high tech and everything. So we realized that we can't do screen share with an Edge browser. And sadly, I always assume that everybody's just on Chrome, and that's a bad assumption on my part. So let's not do that.
Well, so I think we've got the workaround. I think there is information that's heading to you. So I am pretty excited about that. So it should be available. Do you want to take a look?
Yeah.
So hi, everybody. So we're going to bring up the, Brent's going to bring up the screen share in just a second, but I'm so very excited that you're here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I often tell people, if you see me with my hair up, it means this is a working session, right? So this is a working session. And Brent, thanks so much for hosting and for getting this on the run here. I am super, super excited. So what I want to know is everybody in the chat room, and I'm looking at the chat room here. So what do you want to get out of today? Like, what would be most helpful? You know, we're prepping, we're planning for TLDC. You can also use this for other events that you've got coming up, whether they're courses or workshops or conferences that are happening. But what do you most hope to get out of today? And I'm just taking a look at the chat room here. I'm just watching the chat. And Brent, we're going to start with the PowerPoint when we get that.
Yeah.
World domination. I love it, Alex. Or how to maximize an opportunity. We're totally gonna. We're gonna talk about both of those things.
All right, I'm gonna squeeze that over. Okay, so we're gonna start with the PowerPoint. All right, I got it. I'm firing it up. And
nice. Got it, Jonathan. Okay, so lining up conferences and other growth opportunities toward the areas that you most want to grow from the LPI capability map. Awesome. So you took the assessment, Jonathan. What'd you think? And Christopher, nice. So first time TLDC-er. Want to make sure that you're as prepared as possible. Excellent. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So you don't come home wondering what you learned. Yeah, exactly. It's like, how do we go ahead and prime this? How do we pre-frame this so that we do this with some kind of intention, and make sure that there's a little bit of mindfulness. We'll talk more about that. Nice. Oh, Christian, the LPI assessment was surprisingly helpful. That's awesome. That's great. And it actually helped you clarify some of what you want to do. That is fantastic. That's really good to hear. We're gonna talk quite a bit about that assessment. And for those of you who haven't had an opportunity yet to take the Learning and Performance Institute's capability map assessment to be able to assess yourself against the capabilities, the skills, and the competencies that are represented in the CAP map, don't worry about it. You'll have an opportunity to do that. We'll talk quite a bit about it today, but it'll be from a framing of getting kind of an orientation to the report that you get, because after you assess yourself, what they do is they send you immediately a PDF report that will actually show where you're at against the different capabilities and competencies in that particular instrument. Nice, Adrian, I like that. So having the right mindset for getting the best out of the event. Yeah. Yeah, Jonathan, it's really helpful. That assessment is really helpful for getting a baseline. Exactly. So what's your starting point, and then where is it that you're trying to get to? I'm going to give you like a ton of different resources that you can use today, but I want to make sure that we talk about them, Brent, in a very logical fashion so that it just doesn't feel overwhelming. It doesn't feel like a whole bunch of more stuff, that it's something that you can use in a sequence that's going to be able to set you up for success. And then let me just take a look here. Cheryl. Nice. So first time at the conference, newbie in the official role of instructional design. Totally get it. Yep. So we've got varying experience levels. We've got people at different parts of their career, different parts of their understanding or their experience in working within the talent and training and learning and development industry, right? So many different names that we can talk about. That's for another day. But, for those of us that develop people, right? Like that's what it is that we do at the end of the day, is that we're helping other people develop their skills. And so then this is an opportunity about developing ours. Great. Yeah, Christian, you're not alone, having those weird and uneven experience levels, right? And then how to get kind of perspective on that. Here's kind of where I'm at in these different areas, and then where are my gaps, and where is it that I want to go ahead and make sure that I'm really focusing on next. And how do we prioritize, right? Because there's just so much stuff out there to do. So those are the types of tools, and that's the kind of framing that I want to go through today. So Brent, we're going to go ahead and dive into actually the next slide in the deck, because I'm going to talk a little bit about me. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Okay. Oh, Joe. Hey, Joe. How are you? So I have a big, hairy, audacious goal, a BHAG, for those of you who are familiar with the term. I have a big, hairy, audacious goal, and that goal is, and Brent, we're going to go to the next slide here. I totally have a BHAG, and that BHAG is to radically transform the learning and performance profession around the world. And so that's really a lot of where my passion is. So my passion is helping myself and others like really just rock this out. And we can go to the next slide. And when I talk about transformation, I really mean transformation. I don't mean innovation. And the distinction that I'm making between those two words is that innovation is about changing what is, and transformation is all about creating something that's new. And so I see us in this community, in the TLDC community, as creating something that's new. It's not just band-aiding, right? It's not just innovative practices or innovative technologies, even though those are good things. This is like an overhaul. This is like we are really working on revitalizing and transforming what it means to be working in this particular space. And so the reason why I'm sharing that with you right now is a couple of different reasons. Number one is to get kind of an understanding of, that's my lens. We're going to go to the next slide there, Brent. So that's my lens, so you can have an understanding of what my perspective is. We're going to go to the next slide past that. And to then see where your perspective is, right? So I'm going to stop here for just a moment and take a look at the chat room. How many of you have a BHAG? How many of you have a big, hairy, audacious goal that is something that you're like, really have dedicated yourself to? Yeah, Joe, what is it? So who has one and who cares to share? Now, Quetzalcoatl, is that, am I getting close? I'm so sorry. I wrote it down from earlier today.
You
Brent,
did it
how
right.
do I say?
Quetzalcoatl. Yes, and I've been very proud of myself. And just as soon as I nailed it and have been using it effectively, he told me I didn't have to anymore, and I was a little bit disappointed. But I've been approved to just go with Quetzal, so I'm going to pass along that approval to you as well.
Oh, nice. So Quetzal, is that okay? May I? Or I can practice. I have not earned it, but I shall continue to try. So Katie, absolutely, that's fabulous. So disrupting secondary education, I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Molly. So Molly, what are you working on? You said BHAG times 3. And then Joe, okay, so talking about increasing your skills in server-side development. Oh, nice. On the Windows platform or Linux, is there a particular, like a particular operating system, or is it more like, a focus on like DevOps? I'm just really curious. You want to really be able to take e-learning to the 9th degree. Well, I think you're already at like the 8.9th degree, Joe. Adrian, so your BHAG is to make training more interesting and enough to get people to engage consistently. I love it. Absolutely. Fabulous. Okay, so how are we going to do this? And that's what I want to do, is that I really want to make sure that I'm honoring your BHAGs, your aspirations, and the directions that it is that you want to go. Where is it that you really want to be looking forward, and who do you want to become as part of this process? So we're going to start with some of that higher context and that bigger picture kind of stuff, because what I want to do is I want to help you on a personal level and a professional level to really pinpoint your alignment. Because the challenge is, we're going to go back to the other slide again. No worries. So the challenges can sometimes be that we've got personal values and we have professional ambitions, and how do we make the two align? Or how do we ensure and check that we've got alignment between those different domains in our lives, so that we can make sure that we've got integrity and congruence there, so that it makes us feel energized and it makes us feel joyful moving forward, rather than feeling like we're always competing at two ends, right? So we're going to make sure that we're pinpointing alignment between personal and professional. I'm going to show you how to do that in just a moment. We're also going to talk about how to pinpoint your alignment with either the clients that you serve or with the organizations that you work for, right? So in serving people and in serving organizations, how do you make sure that you've got some alignment, that you're moving in a direction that's going to help you be successful in making a living and monetizing these skills, right? Because if we don't have the economic engine behind the messages that we want to bring into the world, then the messages, right, and being able to move in that direction, it's not sustainable. So how do we make sure that we've got alignment in the ways and the opportunities that we're making a living at this, that we can make sure that these things are really coming together? And then that means like really then being able to come up with a very structured approach that's going to help us overall with professional growth and give us some measurable outcomes, right? So we can really have an understanding of, here's how I'm making this investment of my time, my money, my energy in TLDC as an event, in TLDC as a community, in other opportunities that you have coming up throughout 2019, and then really be able to see, like, number one, going into those things with intention and having an understanding of what it is, what value you want to get out, and setting your own expectations, and then being able to check against, were you able to achieve that, and what do you need to do next? And so the key takeaway that I want you to be able to have in leaving today's session is to really have an individual development plan that aligns to that higher context, right? So it serves us professionally, it serves us personally, it helps us continue to monetize and make a living at what it is that we do, and it helps us to move forward more and more and more towards those BHAGs. Thanks, Brent. We're going to move to the next slide. So I have a 5-step framework that I use. I do a lot of coaching programs. I do one-on-one coaching. I do group coaching with learning professionals all around the world. Been doing it for more than 10 years and actually closer to 15 now. And that 5-step framework, I'm going to share it with you because it's going to give us some structure for this working session today. So Brent, we're going to go to the next slide. So we need to have, whether you're working with a coach or not, we need to have really 5 things in place in order to be able to change our habits and to develop our skills. We need to clarify our direction. I'm going to give you tools for that. We need to then, in understanding the direction that we're going, we need to then strategize our actions. How are we going to get there? Like, what are the measurable things or what are the steps that we need to take? oftentimes we need to update our skill sets, right? So what specific skills do I need in order to be able to take these actions to move in this particular direction? We also oftentimes need to optimize our environments. We need to hack our environments, right? So I think we can think about optimizing our environments in other domains, like for those of us that like exercise or fitness, or we're trying to stay on some kind of a workout routine, or for some of us that are trying to be more attentive to nutrition or those kinds of things, we often hack our environments in those type of ways, like, you know, in order for me to stay on my triathlon training plan, I have my sneakers by the door. I make sure that I don't have, you know, cookies and cake in the house, right? I'm hacking my environment. I'm optimizing my environment to support my goals and my ambition. How do we do that also with our professional skills, right? How do we stack the odds in our favor in our different environments? And then mindset, how do we master our own psychology? I've seen a lot, and I think you've done shows too, Brent, on the imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
Do you know
we've
what I
done quite
mean?
a few of those actually, and it just comes up randomly from time to time
Yeah.
too.
It does, and it often seems to kind of sometimes the imposter syndrome, or feeling like, you know, who am I to want this, or who am I to move in this particular direction? And that's just one of the things that can happen with us. But it often happens when it is that we're trying to move towards a BHAG, whenever it is that we're really trying to grow as well. So, how do we master our own psychology in order to be able to set up for success about working on our skills, about making sure that we're taking the right actions and moving in the directions that we want to go? So we're
All
going to go ahead
right.
and get started. So here are some ideas and some tools for clarifying your direction. And some of you may recognize this also as the whole concept of how to start with why, right? So Simon Sinek's, you know, how to start with why. And I love this because success isn't about money and it isn't about status, although it can be about those things. It can also be about contribution. It can also be about joy. It can be about a number of those things. But success in any context is making measurable progress towards meaningful purpose. And only you as an individual can define what meaningful purpose means to you. And I know a lot of times that we talk about this, or people talk about this, but how do you actually do it? Like, how do you figure out what your purpose is? And here are two of my favorite resources for being able to do this. So one is Dan Pink. Dan's got this great video where he talks about how do you look at your end of life, right? And how do you craft your sentence? So at the end of your life, what is the sentence that you want to have that will be on people's lips that they say about you? And I love Finding Your Element, Sir Ken Robinson's book about finding your element, because if you have an understanding of what fills you up, then you're better able to find and go after the things in your life that feed that element in you. And that kind of resonance can really help you like really move forward. And before we move off of this particular slide, I'd like to, if I may, share with you my sentence from Dan Pink. And we'll make sure that we share this slide deck with you after today's session so that you've got access to these resources. But I think that you'll see my BHAG, right? So transforming the learning profession worldwide and doing that with my peers, my sentence, and this is my North Star. This is how I know that I'm on track in my life or not, regardless of the domain. And my sentence that I learned how to craft from Dan Pink is, my entire mission on this planet is to equip and empower those who equip and empower others. And so everything that I do, the way that I organize my life, the way that I structure my life, it's according to that sentence. And when I look at new opportunities or directions, so whether that opportunity is a job or a client or an opportunity to move in a new practice within the learning function, anytime I think about that, I go, well, how well does this thing, right, or this direction align with my ability to be able to equip and empower those who equip and empower others? What about you, Brent? Any thoughts there? Do you have a sentence in your head, or kind of
I'm
a...
all of a sudden just really embarrassed that I don't have a sentence prepared for you today, Trish. I'm sorry.
Oh gosh, well, I don't mean to embarrass you. That's not what that is not at all my
I don't know.
intent.
I mean,
That is not at all.
yeah, wow. If you know, I'm such a fantastic rambler. I probably have 3 or 4 paragraphs that need to be whittled down into a sentence, I think. But I haven't quite done
Well,
that
and
yet.
I think, well, and community's definitely got to be up there. That's got to be off the charts up there.
Well, yeah,
Wouldn't
for
you
sure.
say
I mean,
so?
I
In
think I
the
do say it kind of every morning, and just by doing TLD cast every single morning, I maybe I've just sort of stumbled upon my sentence and I didn't even realize it, but I always try to remember to say the reason why we're here, or the reason why TLDC exists, is to help everybody get better at the work they do in training, learning, and development. And whether that's the BHAG or the big main thing, or whether that's the TLDC thing, I'm not exactly sure, but I think it's probably right up there. Yeah.
So may I ask a follow-up question? May I direct a follow-up question to you? Why is that important to you? What's behind that?
Wow. Is there a couch in here I can lie down on?
That's also not my
you know why it's
intention.
important to me is I think it's the same reason why everybody gets into this industry. You get hooked the very first time you teach somebody something and you help them, and that feeling you get when you see the light bulb go off, or when you see that they've improved because of something that you've done and to help them, is an amazingly wonderful feeling. And so I think, you know, for me, that's always been sort of my North Star, I guess, is, you know, being always just being helpful, I guess, at a really super high level. I guess that's sort of been my theme. It's like, what can I do to just be helpful? And that has kind of just led everything else that I've done. And so, you get to a certain point in your career and it's like, I just want to be helpful. How can I help? And, and I wish more people were live streaming and talking about this kind of stuff. Oh, I guess maybe I could do that. Okay, let's start doing that and see what happens. One thing leads to another and fun stuff starts to happen. So, yeah, it's great. I mean, if you ask anybody, a lot of people in the community have expressed getting new jobs because of meeting us. I can't even begin to tell you. I don't even think I've expressed this to you, but there's been several people that have been just so incredibly grateful that they've met you through me and through TLDC and through whether it was TLDC19 or something else. And now you're mentoring them, or, they're super excited about that. So, that kind of thing. And again, see, there's all the paragraphs right there. I knew there was more to it. So, I don't want to hijack everything.
But I love it. But I mean, I love it, and we can play this back so that you can we can start to whittle that down into a sentence. But that's it. And oftentimes we need to externally process, right? I'm the same way. I need to talk things out, right? And I need to have a conversation. And so that my ability to be able to get my sentence down to a sentence is from many, many, many conversations that I had over a couple of years after I first heard Dan bring that up. And I originally heard Dan talk about that when he was the opening keynote at the then ASTD conference. This was back in 2010. And the reason why that's significant for me on a number of levels is at the time at the conference in 2010, the ASTD conference, I had actually just come out of the ICU. I'm a cancer survivor and had been hospitalized for a month leading into that conference. And so sitting there in that moment in a wheelchair and not being able to walk and learning to walk and talk and eat again, actually for the first time after a series of chemotherapy sessions. And I remember Dan opening the conference. So here I am with like 12,000 learning professionals in the room and listening to Dan talk about how do we align our passion and our purpose. And I love this quote that's up at the top of the slide here from Mary Oliver about what are you going to do with your one wild and precious life, right? Like this matters. We often hear it, the thing that we never get back is time. So what do we want to do with our time in however much time that it is that we have? And then how do we use that as kind of like the checkpoint on whether we're on track with something or not? So having this greater context in my experience has been really hugely helpful to me, quite honestly, in dealing with a catastrophic illness. And probably everybody on this session has either had something like that to deal with themselves or has gone through that process at this point in our adult lives where we've gone through it with somebody else. And it makes us really very kind of hyper aware. So how do we do that in a context and make sure that, we've got some resonance with that for sure. Excellent. So, and again, we often hear about this, but then don't know how to like get to it. Like, how do I start to discover passion and purpose? So here are some tools in order to help you do that. And Jonathan, geez, Farmville, or I'm totally an addict on Ticket to Ride and playing Dominion. If it's all about play for the rest of our lives, I know you're just kidding. But if it's all about play for the rest of the lives, that's brilliant. That's valid too, right? But how do we kind of contemplate and consider that? Awesome. All right. We're going to go to the next slide. So in then having that, that kind of that big picture, and then really thinking about now our personal goals and our professional goals, right? Within the larger context of, our purpose and our passion and really what it's all about for us, right? When we're thinking about a particular event or any opportunity, we are like anybody else, right? Every other human on the planet, we're all dialed into radio station WIFM, which is what's in it for us, right? What's in it for me, and having that me perspective. And we should have that me selfish perspective in really thinking about how it is that, we want to grow or leverage a particular opportunity. So then in thinking about, TLDC in this particular case and the conference from a personal standpoint and also a professional standpoint in getting a return on that value, in getting a return on that investment, what are your objectives for the conference, right? Like, is it education? Is it professional development? Is it to mix and mingle? Is it a combination of all of those things? Is it to be in a forum where you have an opportunity of not only to be in sessions and to learn and consume content, but you actually get to, work and interact with other people and try, and apply while it is that you're on site? You were having a conversation this morning with Sam and with Matt about, encouraging people to bring their video, equipment to the conference and actually being able to, set up and attempt video and actually try their skills while it is that they're on site. So it's very much, and especially for those of you that haven't been to a TLDC conference before, that's really what it's all about. It's not just feeling like we're coming to sessions and it's somebody on the stage who's presenting. Although that's a part of it, it's not all of it. It's also about the practical application of it. And how do you do that in the context of having the community around you in order to be able to help you move forward in those particular skills? But you have to know what it is that you want, right? We have to think that through beforehand. We get a lot of
conversations happening at the event, just to kind of add a little context. But this makes those conversations so much more meaningful. And one of the nice things about going to a smaller event is that you do have an opportunity to not just have a really quick hallway conversation and exchange cards and then never see that person again unless maybe you call them up or follow up later. Is that with a small group in a small environment with lots of social things going on, you have an opportunity to have longer conversations. And so you sort of need to know what it is that you want to talk about, and you knowing ahead of time that the person that you're talking to has things they want to learn. So it gives you an opportunity to say, hey, why are you here? What maybe instead of there's a lot of what's in it for me, but there's also the what can I do for everybody else that's there, right?
And that's a fantastic point, because we all have something to share, right? And I guarantee you there is going to be at least one person there who needs something that you have, right? A skill that you have, knowledge that you have, a connection that you
I don't care how
have,
new you are to the
visibility into
industry.
an
It does not
opportunity.
matter. Like how long you've been in the
Yeah,
industry, how young you are, how old you are. None of that matters. Everybody that's there will have something to share with somebody that needs it. And these exercises help us pull that kind of stuff out. And to Trish's point about the awareness is so critical. And just knowing that helps everybody then start to make the and have the right conversations.
exactly. Or at least
Yeah.
recognize them when we see them, right? Or recognize it when it is that we're experiencing that. Or even making a decision and going, you know what, this isn't for me,
Yeah,
which is also
absolutely.
okay, right? Like if something's happening or there's some experience that you're having at the conference and there are other choices and there will be lots of choices of other things to do, maybe that's not the thing to be spending your time on right there, right? But how do you have some awareness, right, of, you know, if it's fitting for you or not, and then being able to make a different choice if that's what it is that you want to do. And how do we convert those experiences into those personal outcomes, right? So in pursuit of our BHAGs, in pursuit of our vision for ourselves, in pursuit of our
Mhm.
sentence, if you will, how do we line it up? And I don't mean it with like strict rigor and formality and, you know, being very rigid, although you can put that kind of a plan together. But I mean just, you know, even if we were going with the ebb and the flow, how do you know which ebb and flow is for you, right? Just having a general idea of that kind of sensation. And oftentimes in the things that we want to achieve requires us all the time to become someone else, right? So it means changing our identity. It means having an openness and the right mindset for being able to do that. So thinking about who do you want to become as a result of this experience. And so, okay, Brent, you're totally going to be my guinea pig on
Sorry,
this
my too
on this
funny.
call. Um, I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to ask in the chat room as well, who do you want to become as part of this event? Is it, you know, a more senior learning leader? Is it, you know, just if you're starting into L&D, is it just, you know, feeling that I want to become more competent? I want to be competent. I want to feel like a competent learning professional. What do you want to become as part of this event?
Oh
I'm asking
man.
you, Brent.
You know, it's funny because I always want to try to get better at something, and being consciously aware of it is where I've always fallen down. But I think one of the things, and now everybody's going to hold me to this, so I'm going to go ahead and let you. But one of the things I really want to get good at is preparation and preparing and ahead of time for something like an event, and not relying so much on improvisation and just winging it, so to speak. I do that an awful lot, and I lean on my ability to do that. And I also realize that it is not effective in a lot of situations. So I have given myself much less time to do and to say the things that I think need to be said from me at the event. And so by doing so, I've crafted my environment to force me to be very well prepared and prepped, so that I know that the most important things I need to do get put in there. So that to me is my kind of my you know, my goal out of the events for me personally. But as always, to go with the big BHAG, I literally say this, and I've said this before, and before every event we've done, it's like if you ever feel like you leave a TLDC event and you feel like you didn't get what you need, you come to me and tell me, and I will connect you with somebody that can help answer your questions, or I will
Right?
take an hour and we'll just talk on the phone for an hour, and I will help you get over whatever you've run into or whatever. I mean, that is my goal. I want to see everybody else achieve their goals. And that's really my goal for the event, for everybody else to be able to meet theirs.
Well, and I think that's fabulous and so very heartful, right? And one of your strong values, of course, is being of service, right? Is contribution, is being of service and to be in service to others. And so sometimes in making those types of changes, and I totally hear you because you and I are very similar in that regard. I'm very much more the ebb and flow. I can be very structured, but it wears me out. So I can be structured in planning and in preparing and thinking things through, but it doesn't mean that I then have a plan and a checklist and a clipboard and I'm walking through the event going, okay, well, I got this, I didn't get this yet. It's not like a shopping list. And some people are very
Yeah.
organized in that kind of capacity and, bless you, but that's also not my experience. And people ask me all the time, Trish, especially in my coaching sessions, and they're like, well, do I have to change this aspect about myself? And I'm like, well, are you getting the outcomes that you want? If you're not getting the outcomes that you want, then consider making those changes. If you are getting the outcomes that you want and that's how you go about doing it, then rock on. Like, leave it be. We don't have to conform to some kind of standard because one size does not fit all. We have a way of being able to, again, figure out, what resonates with us and be able to then navigate getting to those points and getting to those different milestones in ways that are natural and feel good to us. Yeah. You know. And I think, Jonathan and some others in the chat have brought up some really good points. And that is, there's like a ton of stuff, like there's a world of stuff that we can nerd out on, that we can geek out on. But then there's also things that we feel like we really have an obligation to pay attention to. And we can't consume everything at the conference, or when are we focused too much on consumption to the point where it's a distraction from the things that maybe we should be working on, right? That are taking us away from the outcomes or the results that we want to achieve. And that goes into this next slide here, Brent. And that really has to do with, again, more alignment, not only with ourselves, but then having an understanding of, again, that direction, where do we want to go? So there is ways of being able to level up, right? Like I always think about in any kind of a video game, how do we level up? How do we achieve whatever the things are that's going to move us to that next milestone event, that's going to move us up to that next level? And for some of us, it's moving up a career ladder. For some of us, it's actually, for some people, it's, there are things that I want to be able to, maybe at this point in your career, you're looking at retirement soon. And this is an opportunity to just like nerd out on everything because you're not worried about necessarily growing in a specific direction. You're really more in a discovery period. Or maybe you're at another end of the spectrum, you're new to this profession and you're just trying to like figure out what's out there and what's going on, and you're allowing yourself this exploration and this discovery period. And so you don't know, there's no specific thing that you necessarily want to go like, I want specifically these things, other than I want to be able to use this as an opportunity to communicate and explore and just go and have a good time and enjoy the information. For others, there's something really very specific that it is that we're into achieving, that it is that we're trying to move forward to. So Alan, you were talking about getting more organized and having a better understanding of process improvement. Like, what are ways of being able to capture data in a way that's going to help improve training over time, or help, improve the solutions and the experiences that you offer. So you have a very specific objective in mind, right? And that's awesome. So again, for each of us, we have to think about, baseline, not only what's in it for us in our objectives and who do we want to become from, in going through these experiences and in grand pursuit of our, big picture and our BHAGs, but where are we on that journey, and what is it that's happening next, and where do we want to go next? And we can go to the next slide. So we also need to think, again, this is great as long as we are often being able to then have our financial commitments covered, right? So we need the economic engine in order to be able to continue to be in pursuit of bringing our message to the world, pursuing our BHAGs. We need that, otherwise it's not sustainable. So in having this consideration of our own personal and professional return on investment and what value we want to derive, what about the people who pay us, right? What about the people who invest in our talent and our skills, in our time and our effort? What's in it for them? And especially, so for some of us, it's our own businesses, it's our own. We're funding, right? We're funding going to the event by ourselves. For others, the event is being underwritten by the organization whom you serve. What is it that they expect in return? What is it that you can bring back? And in what context would that make you feel like you met that financial obligation, that you met that commitment, that you took that time away from the office to go and do this thing? And that's true for all of us. Again, whether you're an internal employee or you've got your own consulting business or you're somewhere in between, you're in transition. It's not just about the investment of money. It's also about the investment of the effort and time, because we have choices in the other things that we could be doing instead. So what's going to make us feel from that perspective, from making a living at this, from the organizations that we serve, that this was a wise investment? And having some, again, some loose understanding up front. And so one of the ways that can really help you kind of frame that up, again, at a really high level, and I love this actually comes from learning leader Lou Russell. She's always talked about business objectives in this mnemonic that she calls IRASIS. We often think about it as the princess of learning objectives, Erasmus. And so Erasmus is a mnemonic to remember this is the type of things that organizations invest money and effort into, right? They are looking for outcomes that help them either increase revenue, avoid cost, or improve service, right? So IR, increase revenue, AC, avoid cost, or IS, improve service. And so with the things that you're working on, either with your client base right now or with the organization that you work for, which of these is really the direction that the projects that you're working on, the initiatives that you're working on, what is the remit that they're looking for? What is the objective? Because if they're looking for opportunities to increase revenue, then what are things that you're going to learn as part of this TLDC experience that are going to help you drive that, right? So it may not be, with statistical significance that you were the number one contributor to increasing revenue for your organization or for your clients, but you have a clear understanding of how the things that you are bringing into the world and the solutions that you're providing are actually moving towards, helping them increase revenue. Same kind of thing if it's more along the lines of like avoid cost. If their focus right now is more about avoiding cost, and then, we're out like, we've got intention of being able to come back and be like, hey, I saw this really cool technology. It's going to cost, X thousands of dollars, but I think that we should do it because I think it's really cool. That's incongruent, right? It doesn't meet the need. So if you're going to come back with a technology, then how do you position that technology and that investment as something that's going to help the organization over time in making that investment to avoid cost, right? So again, how do we think about it from the framing of the organizations that we serve, and then put our goals and objectives and our takeaways from the conference experience into language that the business is going to understand? Comments about that, Brent? Anything to add?
That's okay. So I'm noticing some folks. So there's a great question. Simon asks, but aren't they only interested in improving service for the purpose of increasing revenue? So aren't those two connected somehow? And so why does one have to be individual from the other?
They don't, and Brent, thanks for calling that out, and Simon, thank you for bringing that up. They don't. So these aren't mutually exclusive, and it could be. So usually it's two. It's not usually all three at play, depending on what it is that you're looking at. I mean, an organization, of course, has an interest in all three of these areas, but the thing that you're working on right now, it's either a big focus on one of these, or maybe a combination of two of these things. But you're absolutely right. They don't exist independent of each other. That's for sure. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's all in service to being able to, because they need to monetize as well, right? The organizations whom we serve, they need to have money in order to be able to drive their mission, right, and their vision. And so how do we help
at
them
the end
do
of the
it?
day, it all does link.
Yeah.
Like avoiding costs. Yeah, I was going to say this, but Alan dropped it in too. It's avoiding costs does help increase revenue. Improving service helps increase revenue as well. And so it all kind of comes back to that. But the focus of the specific work that we do sometimes does point to one of these three more than others. I mean, think about compliance training, for example, right? Some compliance training that you do that we all love to complain about is strictly there to avoid costs, to avoid extra legal costs, to
Yes.
avoid,
Yeah.
all this kind of stuff.
Fines. Yeah.
So yes, that means that they've made more money because they didn't incur a bunch of legal costs. But what the primary objective of your compliance training is to avoid that cost, which then in turn leads to the increased revenue.
That's right. And improve service. And that's an excellent point, Brent. I so appreciate you bringing that up. And improving service can be an external focus. It can also be an internal focus, and it can sometimes be both, right? So improving service would be things like employee experience, right? Employee engagement. It could be, performance management. It could be that internal focus of improving service to our workers and our employees, to our workforce, as well as it could be improving service out to our external customers. So yeah, there's, but I love it as a mnemonic because it's so simple. And if we thought about it from this kind of context, it would really help us with our communications and our positioning of things when it is, especially when we've got a big ask, coming back from an event like this where we learn about a bunch of stuff. And now there are things that we would like to have investment in. How can we then use this kind of language? Number one, this awareness, and number two, this kind of language in order to then make the business case for that particular investment, including the investment of going to the event.
Love it.
Yeah, helpful. And then here, I really like this particular slide. This is from way back, but I think it really helps to kind of, again, understand where is the learning function in the organization or organizations that you serve. Where are they really focused? Because again, if we're talking about, so here you'll see the continuum. So you've got organizational scope along the horizontal axis at the bottom of the window here, and you've got business outcomes that's going on the vertical axis, right, on the left-hand side of the screen. If they're really focused on developmental needs, as an example, right? So they're really focused on developing the needs of individual employees or workers within the organization, and they're trying to build capability, and you come back and you're talking about more strategic needs, it's a misstep, right? It can be a miscommunication because you're talking about apples and oranges. So how do you, again, have an understanding of, okay, well, where is this organization right now? The things that I'm working on for them, is it developmental needs? Is it operational needs? Or is it strategic needs? Are they building towards their future? Are they trying to transition in a very disruptive, world? Or are they like really micro focused on, developing people to perform better around a technology or an implementation that they're doing or some kind of an initiative, or just even, helping the people that, are already in their current job roles perform those with more efficacy or more efficiency, or both, right? So again, it's just really having kind of that context and awareness of where the organization is at so that we can have some alignment to it.
Awesome. It is
helpful?
very, very helpful. And I constantly, I need these in like a big poster up on my wall to be able to constantly refer to them and remind myself.
Yeah, it's no, I totally get it, and it's funny that you should say that. I have you can see behind me, I have post-it notes all over my wall. That's not the only wall with post-it notes, and we're going to go ahead and go to the next slide here. But so that's the idea is, again, how do we do things in some kind of context, and not because we're trying to put in crushing constraints, but because we're really just trying to get bumper rails, right? So as we, navigate through these opportunities, how do we have some kind of context for them? So that was all about setting direction, right? That was the first step in the process, was really about setting direction, getting clarity of direction. And let me just do a pulse check in the room. Does that give you some direction on how to get clarity of direction? Were those some resources helpful? Yeah, that would be cray-cray. Yeah, no crime scene. It's not a crime scene. I promise. Not this room. No, I'm kidding.
Thanks for stopping in, Cheryl. It's great to see you. Looking forward to meeting you.
Yeah, and you'll have access to this recording too for the rest of it as well, so you can go ahead and use it. Awesome, excellent, thank you.
From a selfish perspective,
so the next
this
thing
helps
is,
me out a lot too, by the way. So I appreciate it. Yeah, it was
is it? Oh, good.
helpful for me as well. So all good.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Brent. So strategizing your actions. So how are you going to do it, right? So that's the next step in my 5-step framework here. So we're going to go to the next slide. And I've got some things for you. So one of the things that came up in the chat room before was how do we prioritize, right? How do we avoid kind of going down rabbit holes? So let me give you some more resources here based on the latest industry research that may provide some more clarity around constraints and some bumper rails, right? Like a little bit closer in strategizing your actions. And we're going to get to that assessment instrument from the Learning and Performance Institute in just a moment as well. So if you've got your competency profile, and I just was looking at mine, if you have it handy, then make sure that you have it handy because we're going to get there in just a moment. But I love this research. This is from the end of last year in 2018. This is from Gartner, and it's the perspective of not just CHROs, but also of CEOs, right? So the CEOs, what is their expectation of talent priorities, right? Of learning and talent development. What is their expectation? And you're going to see here in the blue, we've got 2 different columns here, but you can see kind of the overlap. And there's really this focus on being able to digitize, right? So even though this is talking about more the HR field as a whole, which for some of us, we don't, some report up, the learning function reports up through HR, some report outside of HR. So just play with me here. But, in thinking about in the context of developing people, digital transformation is huge. So not a surprise to see there. But the other thing that I want to call your attention to is the continuous performance management, right? So as we're moving away from episodic performance management, the age-old, annual performance management, we're talking about being able to provide feedback to people over time. So we talk an awful lot about providing the front line with feedback. How do people get feedback so that they get remediation, so that they learn how to develop their own skills and capabilities faster? How do we in the learning function get feedback so we know if our solutions are on target or not? How do managers get feedback so that they can give feedback, right? So a lot of conversation and a lot of initiatives around trying to help managers become better coaches in order to be able to coach the front line. And that's what that continuous performance management piece is all about. So it's not just us in the people development side of the fence that's thinking about that. It's our CEOs. It's the organizations. And this is according to, again, this is a poll from CEB, the Conference Executive Board, which has now actually been acquired by Gartner. So this is a really, really, really big deal. And then your priorities, right? Are you working on learning and training solutions that then provide feedback? Because this is significant. So the technologies, the methodologies, the different tools, the different techniques, there's definitely ways for being able to get to alignment. Thoughts on this, Brent? What does this resonate for you?
It's always very confirming to me to understand and to see the data and the stats around this kind of stuff, because anytime I walk into a new client office or meet somebody for the first time, and this is one of my struggles. I don't know if anybody else struggles with it, but I all of a sudden start to get that imposter syndrome and feel like I'm walking into this situation for the very first time, and I have this mild sense of panic always. It happens every single time, and I'm like, why am I here? I don't know what in the heck I'm going to do for these people. Why do I think anything I know how to do is going to help? And it's always this level of stuff. When I look at the data and when I see the information, when I look at it, I go, oh yeah, now I remember why every other time that I've done this, we've been successful and people have loved it, because it's meeting these needs. And these are exactly what I hear from HR people, from anybody that has any sort of business at all that talks to me about what I do. It's always, oh yeah, we're going through that whole digitization process right now, or we're trying to automate this, that, or the other thing. And oh yeah, our people performance is, we're trying to boost up our talent, and we're having a hard time hiring. So we're really trying to improve the skills of everybody internally, to meet this new level, whatever, on and on. And these elements right here, to me, I think if each of us focused on these just three of the five, you'd be doing pretty darn good.
Yeah, I agree. And it's coming from a source that businesses pay attention to, right? It's outside of the learning profession. It's outside of HR. And Simon, you're bringing up an excellent point. On this particular slide, it doesn't talk about the data that they collected from the CEOs. You can actually Google this report, and the report's really good. There's a lot of firepower in there for being able to build a case for a number of the things that we're focused on as far as learning and talent development solutions are concerned. And they did collect data from the CEOs. It's just not on this particular slide. So yeah, it's a really good point. But yeah, and so again, what they're trying to illustrate here too is that checking that alignment, right? Like, does leadership perhaps above our pay level understand what leadership perhaps above their pay level at an organization, is really looking for? Like, where is the alignment, and how do we make sure, that we're, again, we've got alignment to that, and that we can speak to that, and that it can help us with this kind of navigation. Yep. And we're going to go ahead and go to the next slide here. And I love this. This is from Burson by Deloitte. This model's been around now for a really long time. This is the high impact learning organization, the HILO model. And it's about capability maturity. So it's about the learning functions, capability maturity within the organization, right? So you'll see down on the lower left-hand side, level 1 is order taker. So we hear this all the time, right? Like, stop being an order taker. Like, we shouldn't be an order taker. Well, what does that really mean? And if I'm not that, then what am I? Then what's the other option? And how do I move to other levels? And that's what this model is really, really good for. And again, this is another one that you can Google and you can find this. And what's really nice is that you're going to see a lot of the resources that we're using today on the TLDC webcast are things that other speakers are actually very involved with, other speakers at TLDC at the actual conference. And so you're going to see some folks, you may not necessarily see this particular framework brought up at the conference too, but like Tom Stone as an example, who now works for I4CP. I4CP has actually done some work around high performing learning organizations, and it follows this kind of framework. And some of the things that Tom's going to talk about at the conference actually aligns to this, right? So there's an integration point here where it's like, how do we, so that these things don't feel like they're silos and that they're separate, but how do they come together in sort of a unified solution that we can use in order to be able to bring our efforts forward? And again, it's building the learning functions capability up within the organization. And these are some of the steps. So another good resource that you can use in order to kind of frame your context. And we're going to go to the next slide.
Before we jump onto that next slide, let me just throw out that I've used this slide before also when Josh and his team were working on all of this. And I remember presenting it once and helping an organization see exactly where they are currently at, and just get that big aha moment of, oh, these are where other organizations are. Oh, look, there's people beyond us. Oh, wait, but there's people still doing that. Oh, yeah, we changed out of that, years ago. Okay, so we're feeling pretty good. But yeah, wow. Okay, so that's what we need to move into, right? It frames those conversations that you might have to have with your leadership, with your peers, with colleagues and whatnot. And again, at the event, there's a lot of these elements for each of these will be discussed, but the people talking about them may not reference them into this model. So that's where we all have to, this is where the reflection comes in. This is when we're having conversations.
Right.
We can all start to tie in the things that we're learning from each other, whether it's in a small conversation or whether it's from a speaker or however it comes to you, to be able to understand how to pull all this stuff together.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a framing. And so then how do we have our own framing too, right? So there's the learning function, there's the organization, but how about us as individuals and as practitioners and as learning leaders, right? So that's where this Learning and Performance Institute capability map really comes into play. And so this map has been in existence for quite some time. LPI actually published their first capability map back in 2012. And I had the privilege and the pleasure of actually working on the upgrade, the refresh of this particular map just last year. As a matter of fact, we did a soft launch of the capability map in September in front of learning leaders from around the UK at an LPI event in September in London. And then now, actually next month in London for the Learning Technologies UK conference, we're actually going to be together in London and doing a bigger push of this capability map. And so I'm going to cut to the chase on this. So other people that were involved in shaping the competencies, the capabilities, and the skills that are called out here are also actually learning leaders that you're going to see at TLDC at the conference. They're other fellow speakers. So Shannon Tipton she led the working teams on marketing capabilities, which is really interesting. Who has a learning and performance capability map that features marketing and communication? Well, LPI does, because Shannon was a key part in helping to shape that and going, you know what, we need to know how to make our stuff compelling, not only compelling in its instructional design, but compelling in its messaging so that people know, what it is and what it is that they're looking for. So Shannon led the working group on marketing and communication. I had the pleasure and privilege of working with Brandon Carson. I had him on my team. The two teams that I led in shaping the capability map, this capability map, I led the analytics capabilities and I led the technology capabilities. And Brandon Carson, who's also speaking at the conference, and I love his book, by the way, L&D and the age of immediacy, right? Learning in the age of immediacy. So Brandon was part of the team in shaping technology. So there were a lot of us, Andrew Hughes, out of the UK, and one of the leaders in the XAPI space was on my analytics team. So we wanted to take a holistic view and a global view, not particular to a practice, not particular to a methodology, but particular to a capability. So tools and skills, tools independent, but what skills and competencies do we need in order to be successful as learning professionals? The intention is not to make us experts in all of these different areas, but it's to give us some visibility of areas for the modern learning professional, what's available. And again, according to our plan and according to how it is that we're trying to strategize our actions, how is it that we can set a baseline right now and then set a plan for being able to develop in the areas that we want to develop? So Brent, we're going to go ahead and the LPI website, we're going to flash that on the screen real quick if we can do that. And then also I want to share my, and you have it, it's the PDF file for my competency profile, because I just want to show people kind of what's in there for a moment. So the LPI website, it's a free assessment. There's no charge for being able to develop your own LPI a competency profile in your gap report. You'll get the PDF right away. It's been awesome that some people were talking about in the chat room earlier that they already have it. The link to this is also out on the TLDC website. It's also in the email that was sent out as pre-work for today's session. So you can go ahead and take this anytime. It takes about 20 minutes to complete. So you want to make sure that you block some time for it and have some headspace. It's one of the only frameworks that I've seen in the learning industry, again, because I have an understanding of some of the experts behind how it was shaped, where design thinking, visual thinking is actually represented in this, right? So and there's a whole bunch of information. If we scroll down a little bit on that webpage, Brent, you're going to see that you can see like what is the map all about and who is it for. And a little bit farther down, you're going to see information about how was it developed, and then also who are the people that have been involved, right? So you'll see right there where it's got the steering group members and the working group members, and you can go out. And I just think it's wonderful that a lot of the people that we look to for leadership around the world, that we follow on social media, that we've interacted with at other events, maybe we've been in their workshops or we've been in their sessions or we've read their books, but there's so much representation from the speakers that you're going to see, like Shannon, like Brandon, like myself coming up, at TLDC. So I really wanted to make sure that I shared that with you. But it's also like learning legends. Jane Hart was very influential in this. She was part of the working group. Charles Jennings from the 2010 Institute, he was a part of this. So again, you can go out. Clark Quinn was a part of this. So you can go out and see all of the different people from around the world, the learning professionals and the representation who has been very involved in shaping this. And again, a pleasure and a privilege to work on something that's an assessment instrument that is free to the community. I mean, how wonderful is that? I just love it. Brent, I think we lost your audio.
Sorry, we did. Yeah.
There
so
we
you
go.
wanted me to open up your competency profile?
Yeah, if we could just take a look at that. I'm just going to go to that first page where it just, it's got like a table on that first page there. I just want to show people just real quick, like kind of what it is that you get in this report.
Wrong thing. Wait, there it is.
And you're absolutely right, Jonathan. It totally lines up with my BHAG. And I've been very involved with competency models and capability frameworks for a long time in the learning profession. I spent more than a decade bringing the ASTD competency model around the world. But it's like, and again, it's not about formality necessarily, but it is about quality, right? How do we put together standards for ourselves and repeatable process in things that are going to help us serve the organization and the people that we serve, and then also help us make a living at it. So you can see on the screen here, just over on the left-hand side, and don't worry about the scores. I didn't really, when I went through it, I was testing the profile. So this competency profile doesn't necessarily reflect my capabilities right now. It was just, I wanted to use it as an instrument to be able to present it here and to give you kind of an idea for those of you who haven't had an opportunity to look at this yet. But you can see on the left-hand side, it really gets down into granular detail into those different sections, right? So when we're talking about capability and we're talking about strategic and operational capability, what does that actually mean? And you can see like there's marketing and communications on the lower left-hand side. There's straight up L&D strategy. Again, there's not another framework in the world right now that talks about these things that are complementary, if you will. And I'm thinking about Mike's session at TLDC talking about sales. We have to be able to have a sales and marketing kind of, mindset in being able to make sure that this great stuff that we're producing actually gets used because people know that it's even out there. So lots of different stuff in here, and you can see that it comes down to different granularity, and then you can self-assess and rate yourself and then be able to generate this full report that will give you an assessment against the entire capability map in all of these different areas. So there's also like other areas in addition to strategy and operations is going to be like design and develop solutions. Again, we've got analytics and technology. So, if you're going to Joe's session talking about chatbots, like if technology is part of where it is that you're trying to develop your skills, like what do you need to know about that particular technology? And how can you make sure that you've got, again, at least some basic guidelines for yourself in going to like Joe's session for chatbots and other technology sessions that are going to be at TLDC at the conference. Is this helpful? Is something like this helpful to be able to at least be able to assess your current skills and give you some idea of the places you could go I love that Dr. Seuss quote, right? So, oh, think of the places that we can go.
Yeah, this is great. I have never seen a completed profile. I think I started going through that assessment at one point, and then I just stopped for whatever reason, and I never went back to it. I need to go through and do this myself, for sure, and figure it out. My fear would be is that I overthink doing these types of assessments, and so I guess I should just go through it and just do it, and then just see how it comes up and overthink from there.
And it'll give you, and again, it'll give you a sense of, and again, it's not meant to be like, you're not trying to rate, none of us are trying to rate highly in every single thing on here, but it's trying to get a sense of what's going on in the world, right? And what are the opportunities? And sometimes these assessments can just give us an opportunity like, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing, or I hadn't even thought about how that aspect like applies to learning and talent development, so it can raise our awareness into different directions. Some people are going to find, again, in setting their direction, they're bored. They've been in a particular area of this field for a long time, and they don't know what the other opportunities are. This will help, give some ideas of other things that can be done. And it really is meant to be future focused. The last thing to say about this too is, so usually these types of capability frameworks and competency models are done like every 5 years, but the world is changing so fast. And so when we sat down and did this last year in 2018, it's robust, but we know we're going to have to do it again in the next 18 months to 2 years. So, again, in having an understanding of how fast things are accelerating and how fast it is that we need to be able to have insights into how to develop our skills and to become whatever it is or whomever we want to be next in order to pursue our goals and our personal objectives and our professional objectives. These are instruments and tools that we can have as part of our steady toolkit over the next few years that can continue to help us define our guiding stars. Yeah. We're going to jump back in
here. The support mentoring, support coaching, cultivate communities. I think a lot of people don't associate those types of activities and those types of things with the work of a training and learning and development professional. And so I love seeing that because it is part of that. Oops, I lost your audio. Did I mute you somehow?
Oh, that was me. I got very excited and I accidentally hit my little mute button. But yeah, I mean, exactly. And that's part of your heartbeat and your DNA, right? Is curation, right? You, Brent, don't have to be the expert in all of these things, but you know the experts and you bring them together into community in order for them to be able to share their messages and to share their expertise in exactly this kind of format. And so, yeah, it's, again, I'm really very proud of the things that we were able to bring together as a global team for the capability map. And I'm really excited to be able to share it. And to be honest, the big reason and we all volunteered, no one got paid to do it. But the reason why many of us did it was to contribute to the global community, right? Was that if we were going to volunteer our time and invest our time in this, then we wanted to make sure that it was going to be a tool that was going to have maximum reach, right? That people everywhere in every corner of the globe in the learning profession would be able to really be able to leverage it. So very exciting.
All right.
Yeah. Next slide. So again, setting your direction and then being able to strategize your actions, now upgrading your skills, right? So here are some more resources. So this resource, I really like this resource. And this is part of my secret. This is part of Trish Uhl's secret squirrel kind of, how does Trish know what's going on in the industry? And I'm sharing it with you today. This is from ATD, from the Association for Talent Development. And this is the talent development. So TD, talent development, executive, that's the X, confidence index. And this is actually modeled after the CEO executive confidence index that CEB does about CEOs' ideas of what's happening in their particular industry and their organization. And it's forward thinking. It's meant to be what is happening and how well prepared do they feel they are or not for the next 6 months. And so you're going to see here on the industry, right? So, this was going going on in the chat before, where it's like, okay, there's all these things that are happening. There's AR, there's VR, there's mobile, there's chatbots, there's, blah, blah, there's design thinking. There are all of these different things. What's actually happening? What does the research say people are actually doing? Like, how do we keep up, right? Like, how do we get like a real, more concrete kind of understanding of where other organizations are in their learning function? Is it just hype and people are kind of talking about it and it's emerging, it's not really here yet? Like, where is it and how much do I need to pay attention to it? This report is free. You don't have to be a member of ATD in order to get this. What you need to do is just make sure that you register for a free website account at td.org, which is ATD's website. And then you can search on, again, the Talent Development Executive Confidence Index report. They issue it quarterly. Again, it's a forecast looking forward, and it's, learning executives looking forward and going, okay, where are we with these different practices and technologies? What kind of confidence do I feel like I have the right people on my team as an executive to be able to deliver against these things? It's a really, really good report, and it's going to help you kind of separate, the kind of not fact from fiction. That's not quite right. I mean, these things are going to come more and more into play, like the things that we're seeing where lots of organizations are not there yet. But if you just want to have an understanding of, wow, am I really in my organization that far behind, or really where is the market going? This is one of my secret tools that I've used for more than a decade on a quarterly basis to be able to get those kind of insights.
Just a quick question about that. Is this where they get that data from? We've all been seeing the stat probably all year long, probably ever since this came out, just Q3 of 2018. There, blog posts have been written about it. Articles have been written about the executives feel like they need us more than ever, but they have the lowest confidence in our abilities ever. That whole thing. I'm definitely butchering the quote or what everyone's talking about, but that's been like escalated as this imperative for our industry, and that is the clarion call that they're using. Yes. Is this where that's coming from?
This is one of them. The other one that's coming from is so exactly right, that they know that they need these types of skills. And, a lot of what we saw in the LPI capability map, they know that they need rockstar talent. And again, it's transformation. It's not innovation. These aren't Band-Aids. This is a complete overhaul. And it's this report from ATD, and then it's also reports like Deloitte's Human Capital Trends report, where they're talking about, again, skills development and learning is getting higher and higher and higher on the CEO's radar, and they feel less and less confident that the people that they have, that they have in-house as incumbent, are up to that challenge. And you'll find even more detail in this particular report too from ATD as well. But the other one, Brent, to take a look at for that kind of information is Deloitte's Human Capital Trends report. You'll find exactly those kinds of sentiments. And then what do we do about it, right? Because we should be freaked out about that they don't think that we've got the chops in order to be able to pull this off. And so then what do we need to do individually and collectively about that? Yeah.
Awesome.
And I love this too. Now, this was really important to us for the technology team when it came to building out the capabilities and the skills and the competencies in the LPI capability map. This is from Jane Hart. So Jane Hart does the lists. She does usually the top lists in learning. It's usually the top 200. And then she'll do it across like education and workplace learning. Like there's a way to be in personal and professional development. And that's what you'll see here, like at the very top on the blue menu bar up at the top, or the heading row. So PPL 100, WPL 100, and the EDU 100. So she's got where these different technologies rank in those different sort of lenses, if you will, into quote unquote learning, right? So from an educational standpoint, to workplace learning, to personal and professional, right? So you'll see the different ranking. But what strikes you about these, I'm going to say it again, learning technologies? What is kind of weird about the top 10 of these
But I
learning
was just going to say,
technologies?
none of them are any of our vendors.
None of them are learning
That's right.
technologies. And exactly right. Ding, 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 ding. What's your sound
Oh,
effect
yeah.
there, Brent, for ding, 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 ding? Yeah. So that's exactly it. And so then, so that was a big thing that we talked about. And we went round and round as a committee with the capability map. And we were like, that capability in the LPI capability map used to be called learning technologies. And we were like, we need to drop the word learning because it's no longer about technologies that were made specific for L&D. How do we have a broader context and understand how it is that we can
Yeah.
leverage technology,
Yep.
right, period, in order to be able to promote the learning function? How do we get out of our heads that it's all about the systems that we have budget for, that perhaps we have control over, that we have dominion over, that it needs to be a broader context than that? So that was exactly one of the points. So I wanted to give you, number one, a tool, right? So being able to see Jane's great information here on what are technologies that people are using. And number two, to call that to your attention. It's no longer about just L&D technologies anymore. And we're going to go to the next slide. So here is another resource for you, and I love this. So this has been Matt Pierce, right, who is also presenting, of course, and TechSmith is a sponsor at TLDC at the event. This is the TechSmith Academy, and it's all about video. How do we get better at video? And you can quote stats from more resources about the way of the world is video and how it is that we as humans are communicating with each other. And so there's a couple of different, at least 2 or 3 different sessions at TLDC at the actual conference talking about video and being able to produce this kind of media. But wouldn't it be great to kind of explore and get kind of a jump start? If this is something that's on your individual development plan, wouldn't it be nice to have a resource that you can explore beforehand that ties into the body of work that one of the speakers and one of the main sponsors, TechSmith, actually has, and then be able to use it as a precursor to the conference, and then also have it as something to use after the conference as
Yep.
well.
And
Yeah.
I can vouch it's a great resource, especially for those folks who are new to it or are maybe not new to it, but you're kind of afraid of it. There's certain aspects that you've done, but other aspects that you haven't done. Right? There's so much at the TechSmith Academy, and would highly recommend jumping into that as well.
And exactly. And so then, and it's free, like incredibly, like it's free. Going to TechSmith Academy is free. And I love this. So then I also wanted to give you some resources that, again, also showcase a lot of my peers that are speaking at TLDC, because we should know that they have these types of resources, right? And that these resources are available. And so this is Cassie and Tom's collaboration. This is all about virtual instruction. And this is from their time when they were both at Carnegie together. They actually are the ones that transitioned all of the Carnegie training resources to online. It was Tom and Cassie that did that. And this book is not necessarily specifically the playbook of how they did it specifically for Carnegie, but it's certainly based on that work. How do you take that kind of those offerings from in-person and analog and take it online? So this is Cassie and Tom's work. And of course, Cassie and Tom are both speaking at TLDC. We're going to go to the next slide. So these are like your $20 resources, right? Like $20 or less. Shannon's book also, Learning Rebels, right? So all about disruptive learning. And, so there are some tools in here. But it's even more about the paradigm shift that Shannon really talks about, right? So, and Shannon's, work, a lot of people know about Shannon with microlearning, but at the end of the day, Shannon is about curation. Shannon is about getting the job done. Shannon's about, the 70-20 in the 70-20-10 rule, 10% of it being formal instruction is how we learn. And those numbers can vary, certainly, but it's about that performance support perspective. It's about what do people need when it is that they're actually trying to perform the work and do the job. And we're going to see Shannon, of course, at the conference, and this is Shannon's book. And we're going to go to the next slide. And then Brandon Carson. So Brandon, this book, like I could not put it down. Honestly, I could not put it down because it really speaks to technology from, again, that framing of technology, period, not just learning technology, but technology and some of the real trends and paradigm shifts that are happening outside of the learning profession that are greatly influencing and disrupting the learning profession. And so here's another really good book. And again, do you need all of these? No. Do you need some of them? Maybe. It depends on your individual development plan. But I want to make sure that you have an understanding that these things already exist. When it comes to analytics, this is actually a work that was just published last month in December. I think it's one of the best primers that's out there on analytics applied to the learning function. It also gets into a bit of artificial intelligence. Again, you don't have to be a member of ATD in order to be able to access this. If you're not a member, it's $19.99 for the PDF file. And the PDF file, I want to say, is like 12 or 14 pages. It's a little book. And again, it's a really nice little primer. I had some influence over the content that's in here, and analytics and AI in the learning and performance profession is a lot of what I'm going to talk about in the keynote. We're going to talk in the opening keynote at TLDC. I'm going to talk about ambient intelligence. We're going to talk about the way that L&D is being deconstructed by these different technologies and drivers and these paradigm shifts. If you are a member of ATD, this might be one of the resources that you automatically get for free, right? So again, just bringing your awareness. And then on the next slide for everybody is a series that I've been working on for HR Zone, which is all about getting started on the analytics journey. So Alan, you were talking before about performance improvement and continuous improvement. We saw on the slide from Gartner about being able to provide feedback. Josh Burson's been talking about fast feedback, all of those types of things. On this next slide here in the presentation, this multiple part series, and again, this is free, this is up on HR Zone, and it's all about how to get started from a very strategic focus and thinking about how to leverage data and how to leverage analytics in order to make better decisions around our learning solutions, right? In order to use it as decision making. So lots of resources there. So the last couple of things to talk about as we're winding down for today, the last couple of things to talk about in that 5-step framework is optimizing your environment, right? So this goes back to, making sure that the cookies aren't in the house if you're trying to keep up with your nutrition, or making sure that your workout clothes are laid out for you if you're trying to keep up on your workout and your fitness. And that is, how are you going to set aside some time, right? So whatever, there are different strategies for being able to do this, but how can you set aside some time right now to hack your environment, to think about just even, thinking about these things and even sketching out a bit of an action plan and an individual development plan before it is going into the conference so that you get paid the dividends moving forward? I think one of the people that you should definitely talk to at the conference is going to be Joe, because I think one of the ways that you can hack your own environment coming out of the conference is by looking at using chatbots in order to reinforce things that you learn at the conference. And there's a number of ways of being able to do that. So there's, again, there's kind of the old-fashioned, time is always going to be a part of hacking your environment, but there's also these new technologies that we leverage too, and you've got learning professionals that are out there that can show you how to do that and point you in the right direction. We're going to go to the next slide. And it's all about, skill set, tool set, right? So you've got skills and you've got tools, but it really comes back down to the mindset. And it's not just about the imposter syndrome, but it's also about just having a willingness to come and learn. It's about having a willingness to come and interact. It's about having an openness to, the things that you hear from other people, the things that you share with other people. How do you come to TLDC with the right mindset that's going to serve you and serve the community and serve others, right? So thinking through, what's your mindset? What's your emotional state? What are the things that you want to have top of mind coming into the conference? And we're going to wrap up. So your action plan, right? Oftentimes with an action plan, so I would, highly suggest sitting down with a notebook or a notepad or digital fingers on keyboard or fingers on smartphone or fingers on tablet, whatever it is that works for you, putting together a little action plan that says, okay, here's some of the things that I got out of the session. Here are the things that I want to go ahead and take action on. But then how can you carry this through not only from today's session, but then also have a little action plan template like this for yourself going into TLDC? What did you learn? What are the key points? How will you apply it, right? Thinking that through. And then what else do you need in order to make that happen? Oftentimes we hear about something really great, in a particular session or from a conversation. Do you need to follow up with somebody? Do you need more information? Do you need a particular resource, right? What else do you need in order to be able to take action on applying that thing that's going to help you advance forward in the direction that you want to go in the pursuit of the things that have meaning for you? So as we wrap for today here at the bottom of the hour, what did you get out of today's session? How did Brent and I serve you? How did the community in the chat room serve you today? Like, what are your takeaways, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us?
Peach it, Jonathan. I love typos. They're my favorite thing. And this is tons of fun. You guys have to know that you've been privileged to go through this process and to have taken the time to do this. Consider yourselves extremely lucky, and the value out of something like this will pay forward for a long time. I'm going to be referencing a lot of this conversation that we've been having today for in the next week. Leading up to TLDC, we got a whole week of TLD casts. And so I'm going to, at the beginning of each show, I'm going to, throw it out there and ask you guys about your action plans or your psychology. Hey, are you guys ready? Even turning on TLD cast, if you set your mind to learn something today, and all of those things. Because I think every little bit that you can practice one of these elements gets you that much stronger and builds up that muscle, if you will, in being able to do this. So you're not just doing this for the event. This whole strategy, this framework of being able to work through this applies to the greater things in your life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And absolutely, going into the event, planning for the year, planning the next 3 years, and you can use this framework over and over and over again. And what I like about these resources is that these resources are also evergreen, right? So ATD is going to come out quarterly with those confidence index reports. Jane Hart is always updating, those materials about, this is the 12th year that she's published that report on, the technology that's being used in order to promote learning. So there's all of these different things that we have at our disposal that oftentimes we're so busy doing that we lose touch with some of the resources that can really help us up our game and get to those next levels and take those next actions and become the people that we want to be in pursuit of those big, hairy, audacious goals that many of us have and that many of us share. So I'm really excited because I'll be around over the next week on social media and really looking forward to interacting with all of you and interacting with you, Brent. I'm going to try and be on some of the TLDC chat sessions, and otherwise, yay cake. I will definitely see you on site in Phoenix, and we're going to have a really good time opening the conference up that Monday morning with the opening keynote. So I'm excited to see you there. Thank you for investing your time in this today.
Absolutely. And thank you again for doing so much to be a part of TLDC. I mean, it's fantastic for you to even come out and do the keynote, but to spend a couple hours with us doing this, it is gold. So thank you. It really, really, really is amazing. So it's fun to see what everybody else is dropping in there too. I hope you guys all, put these plans into action, and let's, we want to come back around and talk about these and where did the value lie and what did you get out of it? So super excited for all of this. As just with each passing day, I get a little bit more anxious and excited about the upcoming event, to be sure. So Very, very happy in general. I'm trying to get you to your last slide just so if people want to know how to get in touch with you, that's the one I was looking for. Before I close this down, we'll end on this slide for sure, just so people know. And it's okay that they reach out to you, right, Trish?
Oh yeah, gosh, yeah, and absolutely, and yeah, and actually, Brent, can we go back
Oh,
one
absolutely.
slide just to end on the framework? That would be great. I'm really easy to find. I'm all over social media, and I'm Trish Uhl on everything. So at TRISHUHL is where you'll find me. LinkedIn and Twitter are some of the best places to catch me, for sure. But yeah, definitely, if you can keep these 5 steps in mind, again, whether you're working with a coach or not, and I'll be on site at TLDC the whole time. If you want to stop and have a conversation, I would love to hear from everybody about, what are you working on individually? What are some of the things that you discovered? So, I'll be a little distracted before that opening keynote, but then after that, it's pretty much game on. And I'll be there live in person and happy to sit down and have a cup of coffee or a beverage of another sort. And I'll be around after hours as well. And then also on different social media channels, Twitter in particular. So reach out. That would be great. I would love to connect. And thanks so much, Brent. I really appreciate you hosting today and investing your time. So
yeah, yay cake for sure. All right, everybody, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Tons and tons of fun and lots of great learning. Boy, now I've got a lot of homework to do too, all of a sudden. But it's great homework that I appreciate so much. So everybody, hey, you know what? Even though this is a very, very, very special session, special edition of TLD Cast, I'm still going to tell you to get out there and train somebody and go learn something new today. And everybody sing along. Aha! Those are just some of my favorites. Bye, everybody.